Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for attending the Richard Warnecke Memorial Community Forum. The theme for this forum is cancer health and mental wellness for you, your family, and your community. So thank you so much for joining us. We're very excited to have everyone here today. So just some housekeeping details for using our Zoom meeting. We have a couple of arrows pointing to different Zoom functionalities at the bottom of the screen. So the blue arrow shows you the chat where you can leave your comments as you go along and as you listen to these sessions. Also, our team is going to have some important information that can be helpful to you as we go through the meeting, and some reminders for future meetings as well. The yellow function is to raise your hands if you have a question or if you have a comment on something that was said, as well as the Q&A section as well for any questions that you have as we go along through the meeting. Also very important, the green arrow shows you the different interpretations that we have for this meeting to make it accessible for everyone. So we have an English version, a Spanish version, and a Cantonese version as well. So you can go ahead and select whichever of those rooms works for you. And I know we have a panel later, either today or tomorrow, that's going to be in Spanish primarily in the main room. So that would be helpful if you would go to the English room for those. All right, and so everyone has been muted joining this meeting. So again, make sure you're using the Q&A section to post any questions that you have, so our team can keep track of those questions and make sure that they all get answered. And this event is going to be digitally recorded. And I also just wanted to take this time to remind everyone that sometimes reviewing cancer health information can trigger traumatic reactions, either from personal experience or from experience with your loved ones. So please leave and take a break whenever you need to. This event is going to be recorded, so if you missed anything during that time, you will have the recording available on our website. And so my name is Maxine Joseph. I'm very honored to be the MC for this forum. It's such a pleasure. I'm currently a research assistant at Shirley Ryan Ability Lab, and I was a 2020 ChicagoCHEC fellow, and so it's an honor to be here. And for our welcome remarks, I would like to introduce Dr. Jimbo, Reverend Peachy, and Ms. Ayala Bermejo. And Dr. Jimbo, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. I'm very happy and excited to be at this community forum. Having joined ChicagoCHEC as one of the multiple principal investigators less than a year ago, this is actually the first time that I'm participating in this community forum. This year, it's particularly poignant because we had the sudden passing of Dick Warnecke last month. So I'm very appreciative of the community steering committee to allow this forum to be named in memory of his achievements and contribution to ChicagoCHEC. I know that this community forum is always one of the crowning achievements of ChicagoCHEC that we have annually to showcase the collaborations that we have between the community and the academia. And this year too, over the next 2 days, we have great speakers and presenters. And I'm really looking forward to a lively discussion and interaction. But without much ado, I would like to pass on to Reverend Dr. Kirsten Peachy. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Reverend Kirsten Peachy, and I work for Advocate Aurora Health and the Center for Faith and Community Health Transformation. And we work with faith communities to advance health equity by addressing social conditions that impact people's health. And I've been asked to just have a blessing together on behalf of Dr. Warnecke as a way to honor him and the person that he has been in this movement. So I'll just start off by sharing a couple of my own experiences with Dick Warnecke. My first memory of him was we were working with a group of faith communities in the Roseland neighborhood on the South Side to design ways that faith communities could address health equity in that neighborhood. And we were having a meeting, and for the community, and Dr. Warnecke was there to share data on cancer rates and cancer issues in the community. And so we held this meeting within the context of a Wednesday night prayer service at this African-American Missionary Baptist congregation. And so, of course, it was a spirited service. The congregation was singing and clapping and swaying and moving. It was very dynamic. And then it was Dick Warnecke's turn to get up to speak. And so he goes up to the front, and he's this sort of awkward academic white guy. And my heart kind of sank, and I thought, man, this is not going to go well. This is going to kind of fall flat. But he started to speak, and he said, boy, that was wonderful. And that's really tough to follow. He said, we don't sing like that in my church. I'm Presbyterian. We're known as God's frozen people. And everyone laughed. And just like that, he had everyone with him. And he went on to share this powerful data about breast cancer disparities so that everyone could understand it and could see how it connected to them. And it was really just a wonderful event. And not too long after that, he showed up in a health ministry workshop that I was leading, and he came as a student along with a team from his church. So here we have this renowned leader in cancer research and program design, this extremely knowledgeable advocate for health equity, this published academic who comes to sit around a table with other lay leaders from churches in his area to learn about the best ways to engage their faith in promoting health and well-being. So people may not know that he was a person of devout faith and a very active member of his congregation. But these stories kind of give us the image of a person who, as friends have called him, who was utterly unpretentious. He was kind, wise, visionary, insightful, always striving for justice and equity, engaged, brilliant, trusted friend. You probably have your own words, if you knew him or knew of him, to describe him, but really, truly a servant and a person who loved the work of creating justice in the world. So as we close, and as we close this time together of remembering Dr. Warnecke, and as we start this conference together, I'd like to take a moment just to kind of build a corporate prayer of blessing, a way of remembering Dr. Warnecke, but also really the vision that he had for health equity and for justice. And so I'd ask you to take a breath wherever you are, if you're there in person or if you're on by Zoom, just take a breath, center yourself, and take a moment to connect with whatever the source is of your own spiritual strength. And as we breathe and connect to that source, whatever it is for us, feel the power of the interconnectedness that we share. And that's the power that gives us the ability to heal and to advocate and to transform and to believe that we can and we will create a world where health equity is the norm and where all people are able to be healthy and whole. So if you would, whatever blessing comes to you, let's honor Dick Warnecke by sharing that word of blessing for him or his family, for us as his colleagues and friends, for the communities that we love and care for. And if you're there in person, turn to someone who's next to you. And if you're on Zoom, just in the chat, if there's a word of blessing, it can just be one word or a couple of words, a word of blessing to honor Dr. Warnecke, to honor this work, to honor all that will be carried forward with the love and care that he brought. So just take a moment. In the chat, any kind of, just a word of blessing. And you can continue to think about it and can continue to put things in there. But as we as we continue to remember him and lift up blessings for him and for his family, for each other, and for the work. I'll end with a prayer that comes from the Presbyterian Book of Common Worship. So this was his tradition, the tradition that he comes out of and that informed him. So again, will you join me and center yourself in whatever the source of your spiritual strength is. O Lord, support us all the day long until the shadows lengthen and the evening comes and the busy world is hushed and the fever of life is over and our work is done. Then in your mercy, grant us a safe lodging and a holy rest and peace at the last. Amen. And may it be so for our good friend, Dr. Warnecke. And with that, I pass it on to Karina.
Thank you so much, Reverend Peachy. Thank you, Dr. Jimbo Maxon. What a beautiful way to kick this important work off. It is such a huge honor to be here with you today. While I've never had the honor of meeting Dr. Dick Warnecke, his work, his research in cancer prevention and control has personally touched my life. And as a champion of underrepresented communities, I salute him. I join in the sadness and offer my sincere condolences to his family and to each of you, because I know he was very special and an impactful member of this work and its mission. I am Karina Ayala Bermejo. I am a servant of peace and love. I am an immigrant from Mexico, one of 6 children. My mother, one of 12, my father, one of 13. I was once an undocumented kid. My parents were migrant farm workers from Salinas, California, working in very, very challenging, dangerous jobs during the height of pesticide use. They saved their money and they eventually found their way here to Pilsen, where we adjusted our status. Casa Aslan, that doesn't exist anymore. But it brought me here to Pilsen, the roots of where Instituto is, a beacon of hope that I now have the privilege and honor of serving as its CEO, so that I can be a light for other immigrants, so that their families can reach their fullest potential. We eventually found our way to South Chicago, where someone like my dad, who dropped out of the 3rd grade, could find work and make a living. He was very, very, very savvy. I remember he learned enough English to say, "I'm ready to work." And off he went, looking for work, day in and day out, saying, "I am ready to work." He caught the attention of the HR folks at then Republic Steel, and they asked him, "Well, could you weld?" He said yes. He didn't know how to, but he figured it out. He worked for Republic Steel, then LTV Steel, and he taught us the true definition of perseverance and strong work ethic. What I didn't know at the time were all the red flags of what we will know to be social determinants of health and what contributed to what I know now, my cancer situation, of which I'll share shortly. But that job changed the trajectory of our lives. We came here for a better education, for a better opportunity to coming out of poverty and into what he called our títulos, our titles. He wished that all of his 6 children could work in a different kind of way. He never wanted us to work as hard as he did. And he said that he didn't want us to just work with our hands. He wanted us to be able to work with our hearts, our mind, and our soul. That was his wish for us. My first job in grade school was cleaning classrooms for $5 a week. It taught me strong work ethic. In high school, I was a science demonstrator, fell in love with science, and it is where to this day I contribute or attribute to my public speaking. I earned a bachelor's in science at Loyola University, studied in Italy, learned Italian, became an emergency medical technician, obtained my Juris Doctorate at Loyola or DePaul College of Law, married my high school sweetheart, and are raising 3 teens, 19, 18, and 16. I've had the privilege and honor of being president of very important organizations that matter to me in the space of justice, in the space of equity. I've been the president of the Hispanic Lawyers Association of Illinois, regional president of the National Hispanic Bar Association, been appointed to several appointments by the governor and the mayor that are important to human rights. And it allows me to what I believe is fulfill what my legacy is meant to be. I've always felt a sense of urgency to complete the work of my father and mother's vision. A few models guide me, which is one very important one from a mentor, Judge Abraham Lincoln Marovitz, who always said, now we can't all do big things, but we could all do small things that collectively make a big impact. And that's what this collaborative is doing. It's gathering all of the good that we each can do to ensure that we're making a dent towards health equity, that we're leaning towards moving the needle to finally having some accuracy in data, some investments in our community that are really going to start making a difference to what we know is a racist system that does not properly invest in communities of color. I want to share a little bit about my cancer journey and just close with a call to action and the work that Instituto is doing. Last summer, I started my cancer journey. I had a mastectomy in November, started chemo in 2022. Between COVID, cancer, and chemo, that was a rough year. I started to ask, why me? Why me? But it was also a year filled with kindness and love and so much support. The day I found out I had cancer, my sister found out she was in remission. I know that God does not give us more than we can handle at a time. And while it is not genetic, we had our tests to show that that was the case. We asked, well, then it must be where we were raised. It must be because the red flags in our history of life start popping up. Our parents working in the fields with pesticides, me living in South Chicago, where you can see the soot from the steel mills on our cars, where I moved to Headwish with my children, where we can see the Petco Hills by the lake, when we have to fight for General Iron to stay out of our communities. And then we wonder why we have cancer. And then we wonder why there's an increased number of our children who have cancer, who have asthma, who have upper respiratory infections, because the environmental justice issues are real. So that is why it's so important for me to be here at Instituto at this time, where we celebrate 45 years of being a beacon of hope, where I have had the privilege of opening up a college of nursing, where we have graduated our first 2 cohorts of bilingual, bicultural nurses, because we know that's going to make a difference, that they're going to be the ambassadors towards health equity. And where I am so proud to be and meeting students wherever they're at, whether it's at 3rd grade level like my dad, to help them have a stronger English and math proficiency to start a career, whether it be in healthcare or elsewhere. I am reminded that our community is no stranger to obstacles, but we know that our communities are unjustly faced with increased obstacles. And we know that social determinants of health, having a job, clean air, clean water, food is critical to ensuring that we have a healthier tomorrow. Our health should not be determined by our zip code. And because I came from 60617 doesn't mean, shouldn't mean, that we all get cancer. I am so grateful for the opportunity to share my story. I am so grateful for the opportunity to learn with you and to grow with you so that we can take important steps towards a true tomorrow that has affordable health care, that has access to clean water, clean food, and a better tomorrow for our communities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone, for that amazing welcome. It was so good to hear so much from you guys about the person that Dr. Warnecke was and about the work that you're doing right now in health equity in so many different spaces. So just thank you so much. I hope this serves as a driving force of inspiration to continue to motivate more and more people to continue to work into health equity. For our next session, we have, our next session is on neighborhood violence and, oh, I'm so sorry, I have the wrong session. We have a cancer caregiver panel, and this is going to be facilitated by Ms. Joanne Glenn. So thank you so much, Joanne, and the floor is yours.
All right, thank you. Well, good morning and welcome to our homes, our rooms, and our office. I hope all is well. I have 4 different type of heroes. They're called caregivers. I was trying to decide on what I should put on for the camera. Should I wear pink for my breast cancer survivors? Should I wear blue for the men that are the caregivers that we're going to talk about? And I decided to put on my fatigues because this is a fight. Every day is October, and the panelists that you would see, which is Eric, Evan, Henry, and Manny, have some amazing stories that they want to share with you regarding the care of their moms, the challenges, the resources, and I think I know you will be blessed, amazed with some of the information we have. These are the questions I'm going to put on the floor. We may or may not get to the answers, but what I know we will do with these heroes is get solution. So I'm going to find out from Eric, Evan, Henry, and Manning what their story is, how they fit into the care of their moms. How do they feel about taking care of the woman that brought them into them, that birthed them? What kind of barriers were there? Were there resources there for them? Did they feel like they were equipped and capable of taking care of their mother that took care of them, loved them, and brought them into the world? And lastly, what would you have liked to see different in the care of your mom? So I'm going to go ahead and open up the panel if they can give a short intro of who they are and who they took care of. We're going to start with Eric, and the floor is all yours. Let's get this fight on because every day is October.
All right, thanks, Joanne. My name is Eric Briggs. I'm the son of Gail Briggs, and also the brother of Manny, who is listed later on this panel. Currently, I'm working as an engineer for a company called Burns & McDonnell as a distribution engineer here in Atlanta. I just recently moved out from Chicago to Atlanta. And yeah, just to give a little more background on myself, grew up in the Chicagoland area, South Suburban, South Holland, for those who are familiar. And then when my mother was diagnosed, I was in high school at the time. So looking into my career, I'll say, and then transitioning into the college life as well, while she was, still going through the phases of dealing with her condition. So that's pretty much a brief introduction to me. So I'll give that to the next person.
Evan, can we have an intro of you, please?
Hi, yes, my name is Evan. I am the son of Elizabeth Rivera. I have a very similar story to Mr. Eric here. I found out my mother was diagnosed with cancer when I was about 15. And that was the introduction to me transferring to college and all of this. But yes, my mother and I run a daycare currently. And I'm from the Chicagoland area as well.
All right, thank you. We'll be looking forward to the stories. I'm not sure if Henry is on yet, so I'm going to skip to Manny because Henry is actually attending a funeral in Atlanta, but he will join us shortly. So Manny, Emmanuel, kindly loved as Manny.
Hello, I am Emmanuel Briggs, and everybody calls me Manny. I am actually the same story as Eric because that is my little brother. I am currently a transportation associate at Amazon, and pretty much we both found out around the same time, and we're going through a lot, but we push.
So until Henry's able to join us, let me just put a general question to the panel. How do you feel? How did you adjust to being able to hear that your mom had cancer, breast cancer? And what were your steps? Did you want to run? Did you have help? How did you, the then young boys, now men, take care of your mom and get into that role? Please, in any of you, all of you.
I could go ahead and you go first.
Okay, I would like to say that honestly, when I first found out, I was extremely scared and powerless. I didn't know what I can do, and as a twin, my brother shut down, so I kind of had to step in and be that person. And that's from covering all the mirrors after surgery to draining her tubes to even giving her a shower if she needs it. So yeah.
Yeah, from my perspective, it wasn't just myself, it was me and my other two brothers, and then of course some family members. But with first hearing the news, of course, it was disbelief. You know, it's that first step in dealing with something tragic, and that's, at least for that moment, that was like a tragic thing for us. So I was just pretty much in like, okay, this isn't gonna affect her. This isn't. She's stronger than this. I always had that faith, and then just had the idea that this wasn't, as serious as it was. It wasn't until, she started, needing more help with things around the house, or needed more attention, or just rides to the hospital, or to get her treatments, that it became more effective. We all kind of pitched in from each point of view, just not myself, but family members outside of the immediate family that were helping out as well too, with rides. And then my aunt at the time was able to help out whenever she could, or my cousin that would stay over, or one of her close friends that was staying at her place. We would all like chip in equally whenever she needed us. Of course, we're still trying to balance life and things that we're doing, along with being a caregiver at the same time, but which was a little tough. But she made it very easy to navigate because she was very vocal. That's one thing that made it easier for all of us, is my mother's a warrior. In that sense, she was always able to give us, okay, I'm going to be dealing with this, so I need someone to come pick me up and give me a ride. Oh, I need someone to, I'm not able to make it to this event, but it needs to get done. Can somebody help me with that? And she'll always, consider what it is that we were doing. She made it very simple. So it was hard to say like, oh, it was very effective on me, when she was the one that kind of still facilitated somehow, in the midst of all the chaos. So it was, that layer of disbelief, and then, level of severity that initially wasn't taken, and it wasn't until later on that, it started to get a little more serious. But that's when we learned how to adjust. That's what separated, the warriors from the weak in that sense. And she was definitely a warrior.
Manny, you want to add to that?
Yeah, when it came down to it, she was definitely a warrior. Anytime she needed anything, like Eric said, we'd all just, whoever could do it right then at that moment, we'd do it. If she had any car troubles, I was always there to be the one to come fix it. But at the same time, our mother being the strongest person, well, the strongest woman that we know, she pretty much just, anytime she wanted something done, she just tell us, and we either hop to it, or we'll figure out which brother can do it at that time.
What resources did you guys have? How did you pull through this?
May I?
Please.
Well, at first, we had a small group of friends, which grew even larger, and the butterfly organization really helped. It was a very strong, collection of ladies who had similar experiences, because not everybody has the same cancer journey, but there's other solutions to, that are bothering you that you might not know without the support of, the girls. Also, the other support system I had would be my cousins and my brother. And majority of my, the village to make something work, and they helped out quite a bit.
Right.
So
Great, the big
definitely,
guys. Yeah.
yeah, definitely the village. that was the number one supporter. But then, it became more apparent later on how not everyone uses those resources. So we did have the resource of the family around us at the time when we first heard the news. But later on, as my mother got more involved with whether it was American Cancer Society or the Butterflies itself, and finding these groups when she got more involved, those became a resource as well. It wasn't, I think the first event we went to was around 2009. It was like a walk for breast cancer. I think it was for Breast Cancer Society on 63rd, close to the lakefront. And she, it was just a bunch of pamphlets on, how to deal with this. And of course, at this time, she's doing the full walk. It's like where when we needed this, we weren't known that this was available. But when it came to joining these groups, that's when we knew, like, okay, these are all the resources that are out there for somebody else dealing with this. So us personally, we didn't have it immediately, but later on it became more available. But that's when she started to be more comfortable and started to reach out to different groups as well.
Great, thank you. I see Henry was able to join us. Henry, could you give an intro and kind of tell us a little bit about your journey?
Well, sure. Well, first off, thanks for having me. I apologize for my tardiness. We had a CNA who lost her mother, and so I had to go by that funeral. But my name is Henry Mason. I'm from Chicago, Illinois. I went to Morgan Park High School, left there, went to Morehouse College, finished there, and got into hospice. And so we started what we call Precious Hospice, loving care through life's most precious memories and precious moments. We originally started in Atlanta and were able to branch out to Chicago. Just recently looked into branching out into Indiana. My personal experience as a caregiver and as being there for someone who has cancer came from two sides, both my mother and my father, both of which passed earlier this year. I was able to kind of be there for them and kind of walk them through what they were going through. Just to give you an idea, I remember my mother, the last few times she would say to me, "Hey, I really don't want to have you taking care of me in my last few days. If I had a choice between being bedridden and being able to move on my own, I'd rather just be able to move on my own and not live 3 to 5 extra years on chemo and not being able to take care of myself." But she understood caregiver burnout. She understood what that looked like because she has been in the home care hospice business for 10, 15, 20 years. And so I also understand what it looks like, but that was my journey with it for the past. And I guess I've been doing it now. I had been doing it for the past 4 or 5 years, just taking care of both my mother and my father as best as I could.
Wow, I got to tell you guys, and I know you all personally know your mom, knew your moms. You all are the heroes. And when they talked about doing the conference, I thought about the men behind. Don't count me out. So I'm so grateful that you all were able to pause in your busy schedules and join. But did you ever feel like this was something that you couldn't do? Please, Evan.
So at first, it was a little overwhelming. Actually, and it was very overwhelming. I didn't know what to do, and all the doctors didn't give me terms. So, I was even more confused. So I felt like I could not do it, but I also knew that someone had to. So the fight or flight, and if they fight, I'm gonna fight. So here we are.
Good stuff. What would all of you, I'd like to see different, what kind of advice, resources would you tell for the next person that might have to be in your shoes, which wasn't your choice as a caregiver? What suggestions, advice could you share with the audience?
One advice, you go ahead first, Henry.
You sure? You go. Mine, I can listen.
Okay. One thing I'll start with is just using your resource. You don't have to bear the burden of whatever. Well, it's not even a burden. You wouldn't see it as that, but however, you wouldn't have to bear the load of, being a sole person that's given the care for a person. If you have family members or friends that are close enough, be sure to pull on those, because we all know that not one person is capable of doing everything that is needed or being there 100% of the time and still balance life on the other side. So one thing I would say is use those personal resources that you have, and then also, listen to whoever you're caring for. Some people may look at a group or anything like that and say hey, it's this other group of people that you might be interested in, you should do it. But that person may not be ready for, that level of intimacy or that level of opening up with people in that moment. Maybe it's something for them later, but it's just all you have to do is just listen to see what it is that they're open to too. It's fine to do the research and find those groups, such as, those caregiving groups or other groups of people that are going through that situation at the same time. However, it is up to that person that's going through, those things to figure out when and if they'll be able or are comfortable with joining certain groups like that. So use your resources and just listen to the person you're giving care for, being there for him. That's all I got.
Excellent advice. Henry?
Yeah, just to piggyback on the resources portion, you really have to understand you are not in this alone. The government has already allocated programs, whether it be home care programs, home health programs, palliative care programs, hospice programs, that people need to aggressively and actively look for. Because a lot of the times people qualify for these programs and they won't cost them anything out of pocket. And so that would be of course, something that I knew about. So obviously having a homemaker or getting that type of home care service in the home and then transitioning them to palliative care, then transitioning them to hospice care was extremely helpful. Just to give you an idea, you can probably get someone in your home to help you bathe he or she or whoever you're taking care of 3, sometimes 4 times a week, and it'd be no cost to you at all. But we have to reach out and learn more. I guess we as the providers have to do a better job of educating and letting people know that these services are available. These services do not cost you anything out of pocket. The majority of them do not. And you just want to call these people and say, hey, does this person I'm caring for qualify for this? And if they say yes, well, what help can we get with no out-of-pocket cost? That's where we have to really tap into these resources. Because even if a hospital is overwhelmed, they may not be able to feed you these referrals that you need. But reach out to getting into different groups, coming onto different platforms like this, understanding what's available to you, and then not being afraid to sign up. Because even if you qualify now, you may qualify for a month, you may qualify for 2 months. But caregiver burnout is a real thing. So if you can just get 2 hours or 3 hours a day just to get a mental break, that will go a long way for a lot of people. So that's what I would say with those resources. Understand home care, understand home health, understand palliative care, understand hospice. Do not be afraid of those programs. Be aggressive and eager to learn more about those programs, which ones are in your area, and which ones you qualify for with no out-of-pocket cost.
Great information. Thank you so much. I just want to ask a quick question before Manny can add something. Evan, you said you covered the mirrors in the house.
Yes.
Were you asked to do that, or tell me why you did that?
Well, I wasn't asked to do that, but I walked my mom across the house and I could see that she did not want to see herself, which is also a part of the reason why she didn't want to bathe herself. She didn't want to see tubes coming out of her. She didn't want to see her bruises or scars. So even when I bathed her, she looked up. She didn't want to deal with it, but it's, something that had to be done. My mother, originally, she wouldn't even go to bed before she showered, So I know how uncomfortable that made her. And she also vocalized that she didn't want anyone to remember her this way. So I know that she was very uncomfortable. So yes, I had to clean those mirrors.
Okay. You kind of learned on the go, huh?
Yes.
Self-taught?
Yes, and you know, it's your mother. You know her like the back of your hand. So,
Yeah. Comments from you guys before I want to move forward to see how they're doing now. We have time, but we'll get to that because definitely want to know how they're doing now and what the status is and how you're doing. So let me ask, you've gone through a period of being taught how to be a man, then taking a step back, taking care of the person that brought you into the world to being who you are now. Do you feel like you were let down at any point from the healthcare system, or for not being prepared? Or do you think you're able just to keep going?
I'm sorry.
No, just looking for success stories, barriers, failures, or just any kind of information that can help the audience.
Okay. Well, in terms of my mother, she has been a survivor for a couple of years. Has successfully started her business, and that was in daycare, and now actually as a professional life coach, which is amazing. And yeah, it's possible. You know, there's always hope.
Good. Manny, what's going on with you and your mom now? How are things?
Everything's good. I would like to say my mother knows me, and she knows I have a tendency of, when something is wrong or anything like that, she knows that I have a tendency to push that into the back of push the problem into the back of my head.
Mhm.
But even with her going through this, I had my brothers there to talk to, and I had my mother that anytime she saw something wrong, she'd always ask, "What's going on? Are you okay?" She was always being a strong person for me. And I would like to say that if you're going through anything while giving care to someone, speak up, talk to whoever you can. Just don't push it to the back of your head, because that can cause problems for you in the end of it.
Yes, that's really important. Here you are the caregiver, and she's still trying to take care of you as you're providing care. That's motherhood, right?
Yeah, she had a tendency to continuously do that, and she still does it to this day.
Yeah, yeah. Henry, I want to just ask a couple questions with you because I know you're a provider. You're on the hospice agency in Atlanta, Chicago, and your mom followed you to Atlanta. So I know you guys are very close. How you doing? Because yours is kind of recent. How are you?
It comes and goes. So it's in waves, right? It's not one day is, well, I guess it is. One day is great, one day is bad, but it could be a 3-hour period. I can have a 3-hour period and not even understand why I feel down until after I come out of that moment. I think the biggest thing for me is because I'm so aware of the resources that are available. So with my mom being on hospice, even though it was my service, I'm still able to get grief counseling. So there's something that I go to twice a month now, right? And that kind of helps when I go to them and I say, wow, on Saturday, for whatever reason, I cannot get out of bed till 5 p.m. And they say, oh, what did you think about the night before? What was going through your mind? And I said, everything was just cloudy. I couldn't get up. I couldn't function. I didn't want to work out. I didn't eat. So that type of depression, which is really is what it is, just having somebody to talk to and go through it helps me get through it. I'm not over it yet. I think I got a double whammy. I got my dad died in January. My mom died in April, and I'm not over it yet. And I'm open about, people know me. I say that all the time. I was blessed to have a son 2 weeks before my mother passed. So that has definitely helped me understand life more. One thing coming out, another one coming in, and that has helped me transition, if you will. But I'm still struggling on sometimes. Some days are good, some days are not so good. I'm just now able to go to funerals. I wasn't able to go to funerals for a few months. And so, I hope people are okay. They understand that. But I wasn't able to do that because the feeling when I was there was just too much for me to handle. But now with the counseling and being open and having these conversations, like, this helps me just as much as it may help someone else. It's another moment for me to talk about it. And if I tear up a little bit, those are my real emotions. So yeah, that's how I'm working through it and on a daily, hourly basis. Yeah.
Right. loving, losing, and caring are all challenges. So I just want to bridge into mental health, and thank you, Henry, for being so open.
Sure.
Has anyone ever thought that mental health would help, or did you need to talk to someone? If you feel free enough to share that, counseling, just going in the room and screaming, and those healthy tears.
I would have to say that I did go to a therapist for a while because, we at the time of me finding out, my mom was also going through a divorce after that, and we got the news of the insurance companies not wanting to give us insurance, and having to take care of that by ourselves, pay the bills, and it was a lot. So I would say take advantage of that because you will feel better afterwards. It helps. It's hard, but you do have to talk to someone.
Yeah. Anyone else on
I would
themselves,
say
wellness? Mhm.
you have to pay attention to your mental health whenever giving care to someone because you never know. It could be draining you. And then on top of that, your own mental health can cause you to feel tired, mentally drained, and then you're not gonna feel like doing certain things. So you're gonna be tired all the time if you don't take care of your mental health.
Good point. Were there times that you could just get away and walk away and get some relief from the care as a caregiver? Or did you feel like you just had to be there and there was no relief?
Well, because I had my brothers and my cousins and my aunt,
Okay.
we had times where we all would be able to take breaks and
Good.
do what we need to do or get away, or even my mother wanted to take some type of vacation or break from everyday life.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's difficult to consider your own when you're more worried about the person you're giving care to, and I think with that, we never, well, I personally didn't really even consider that mental health aspect of it because like we said, we had that village to work with and kind of console her in her time of need. So if that was the case, it would never be more of a burden on me. It would just be at that perspective of I'm doing this for someone else. So, I'm blessed to say that it wasn't as effective for me on my mental health because we had such a solid foundation around her. But we also are aware that it's not the same for everyone. We also are aware that even if it was, something that wasn't as severe for me, that it would be other cases in which it was. And that's when we find our resources that we could share with someone else. So Henry, given your situation, yeah, I'm thankful that you're here to share, and I'm grateful that you're able to, give us your side of the things because not everyone has that level of dealing with such a thing. So thank you for that. But from our perspective, we're just grateful for what we have.
No. I appreciate that. Thank you. I think mental health for me, unfortunately, it came from someone else telling me. And I mean, I'll be honest, there were some moments where I didn't realize how overwhelmed I was, even with the help that I had. And so I believe it was my fiance who told me originally. She said, "Are you okay?" I said, "Yeah, I'm fine." And I don't know what I said to her, but it made her stop and tell me, "You need to slow down, take a break." And just having someone that's close enough to you that can be honest with you is huge. Because if she was the one who told me, there's no telling what I may have said to someone else and not even understanding or realizing it because at that moment, I may not have even realized what was going on or what I was doing. Just little things like you don't even mean to be rude. It's just the way things come off because of what's going on in your mind. Mental health is huge. So being able to discuss it with someone, especially now with the virtual, it's just so much, it's so much easier to kind of do that. I think it's huge for a lot of people. Like I said, grief counseling for me is still big. It gets me through my moments. So being able to protect my mental health is a huge plus for me.
Great. The title that I selected is Don't Count Me Out. And as I listen to your stories, you guys have become the caregivers, the supermen that are not always not acknowledged, not always spoken about. So we wanted to take this time to let you know that we appreciate you. We see you, and we wish we had 4 more of you. People are not always blessed with having someone that don't leave. Because sometimes people leave when people are diagnosed, as we know, with cancer. Sometimes the stories are not supported. Sometimes people are mean. And sometimes people are just not strong enough because of lack of resources, or just having the experience of what to do. So as we get to the closing point, because I don't know if we have time for class questions, what would be the one thing that you would like to share with the audience regarding your experience? Because you didn't choose it, you stepped into it. And I'm going to start with Eric, as we started in Alpha. Eric?
Yeah, so one thing I'll say is just kind of the themes of what Henry and I are speaking to, is just use those resources, but not just using them, become part of those resources as well. I think what happens a lot when people get through their journey, they always kind of leave it at that. They don't kind of look back or reach back to those who might be going through it as well, and being a resource for them. I know with the butterflies, you know, my mother, she was very much involved with them, and therefore I was involved as well. And this is, you know, after her journey to, you know, help facilitate care and then give a group people that, you know, connect them with similar situations. And it could be assistance, like financial assistance, because these things are cheap. You know, other cares and other resources that they may have not known about, you know, outside of the realm that they were living in. You know, just being a resource for them and continuing being a resource afterwards is one thing that I'll say would need to be done.
Great advice. Thank you so much, Eric. Evan, what would be the one thing you'd like to leave the audience with your journey as a caregiver?
I would say trust the process and don't be afraid to accept assistance.
Thank you. Henry, could you leave us with some kind parting words, please?
Just get help. And it doesn't make you weak for wanting help, or it doesn't mean that you're not capable of doing it. It's just get help. What these services, and I just repeat them again so people know: home care, home health, palliative care, hospice. If you qualify and it's no money out of pocket, sign up for these services. These services are in place for you to get help. And so get as much help as you can, as often as you can. If they tell you they can only do 2 days, ask for another day, because they're going to try to get it approved as well, because that's what they do. They want to help. So just get as much help as you can. Reach out to companies, or even you can reach out to me. I can help you find someone who needs what you have. I'll be more than happy to do that for anyone.
Thank you so much, Henry. Manny, what would be your parting words as a caregiver for the audience?
Take care of your mental health, and when you need to, reach out to someone that can help you with caregiving. Just reach out to anyone. It can be a friend, family member. If you need a break, if you're going through something, let that person that you're giving care for know, and reach out and try to find some type of help for yourself as well.
Thank you so much. Again, I would like to have just a few closing remarks. We know every day is October for those that have breast cancer and are going through it. In the next 8 days, everything's going to turn pink, from the cleats on the field to the yogurt tops and milk tops. And I just want to make sure, as I know my 4 panelists know, when you're going through breast cancer, it doesn't stop November 1st. It's not just in October. It's every day is October. So we continue to support, to help those that need help, give financial support, psychological support, mental health support. And I want you all to know from CHEC and from this group, these are the real heroes. This is a good sampling of what caregiver looks like. I thank you all so much for joining the panel. I got to get some tissues because I know you all personally and your moms, and I tell you, we couldn't do it without you. Thank you so much for your time. Henry, thanks for reaching out, saying that you can help. We will be reaching out because I know you are an expert in the hospice field. Do know, my brothers, that I, Joanne Glenn, and the Watt Foundation, as you know, is here to serve you as well. So thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it, as does CHEC.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
having me.
Thank you.
Are there any questions from a couple of people on the panel, on the audience for the gentleman? Okay, so you're all crying too. I'll check the chat and we'll talk later. We'll continue with the conference. We got about 5 minutes back of your time because I can't take any more. Thank you so much.
Ready.
All right, bye-bye. Appreciate you guys very much.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
All righty. I have the information on all these gentlemen. If you guys need something or want something, they've walked that walk, so they're not just talking the talk. I think caregivers is very important, and I just wanted to make sure as we work with CHEC, through CHEC, to know caregivers come in all types. You know, sometimes it's the extended family, sometimes it's the family that has to do it, sometimes it's the family that want to do it. So I want us to continue our reach in community, make sure we have the resources, and try to minimize, if not eliminate, the barriers and disparities of care. Again, thank you so very much. I'm Joanne Glenn, President and founder of the Watt Foundation. Have a great afternoon.
That was such an amazing session. Thank you so much to all of our panelists. Thank you so much to Ms. Joanne for facilitating that panel conversation. I mean, even I forgot that I was the MC, and I was just like, yes, this is just amazing. Thank you so much. That was so informational. That was so inspirational. I mean, I could just keep listing adjectives. Like, that was just, wow. That was truly amazing. You know, and hearing these stories, these are the stories of real heroes that have had to step up in these very tough situations, you know, and reach out for help, like they said. And wow, that was just truly amazing. That was honestly amazing. Right now, we are at the point of our break for this session for today. And so today we have Dr. Mindfulness Activity. She's going to lead us through optional mindfulness activity. I'm definitely going to be staying on for that because that session, the previous panel was just so amazing, and I feel like this can be very helpful to give a quick reset for your minds. Our break is going to end at 12:25, so if you're going to take a step away, please be back by 12:25 so we can resume the sessions. But I'm going to hand it off to Dr. Mengesha. Thank you so much for joining us and for leading this activity.
Thank you so much, Joseph. And hello, everyone. As Joseph mentioned, my name is Mindfulness Activity, and I am Director of Programs at Wellness House. And for those that are not familiar with Wellness House, we are a community where all people affected by cancer thrive. We offer services at no cost and as a complement to medical treatment. And really, our programs are geared towards educating, supporting, and empowering participants so they can live more fully lives, physically, emotionally, and beyond through cancer. Our services are offered to those diagnosed as well as caregivers and loved ones. And I agree with it was nice to read the chat as our heroes were sharing their story. What a powerful caregiving panel that we got to experience. Just feel so honored to have heard the stories of Eric and Manny and Evan and Henry. So wonderful for them to share their open stories and thinking about the trauma that they witnessed by watching, for Henry, both his mom and his past experience cancer and treatment and subsequent passing. So appreciate all of the stories that were shared and just really value that portion of this forum. It's really what brings us all together. And, you know, so here's our chance to pause for a moment and kind of have an experiential break. Some of what we know that goes along with the cancer experience is traumatic, and I use that word intentionally. And so the wonderful ambassadors of health equity came up with the idea of doing a mindfulness exercise as kind of a respite or a treat from the hard realities that we know that come with cancer. So I'm happy to be leading you through both in the break today as well as tomorrow. You'll get to see me there as well, leading a mindfulness exercise. And what are the benefits of mindfulness exercise? You might say is the opportunity to have the reduction of stress, as was mentioned by our heroes before. Often we carry the stress and don't know, and it's not until we get to benefit the absence of it, right? By practicing some mindfulness exercises or other stress reduction exercises that we realize how much we carry and the burden that that has on ourselves, physically, emotionally, spiritually, really our whole selves. So we will begin. And what I would ask of you is just to simply follow my voice. I'll just be leading you all in a guided mindfulness exercise for this break. Thank you for staying on and participating. And those that needed to step away, appreciate you taking care of yourself in all the ways that feel important and meaningful for you. So please just take a moment to make sure that you're seated comfortably. For some, maybe you would like to turn your cameras off if you haven't already. Maybe you want to dim your lights in the room. Rest your hands loosely on your lap. If you'd like to close your eyes. For the next several minutes, I just ask that you follow the lead of the directions that I provide. Begin by taking a slow, deep breath in, holding it for a moment, and slowly exhaling, just allowing any tension to melt away as you gradually relax more and more deeply with each breath. Again, as you're settling in your chair, feet planted firmly on the ground, take another long, slow, deep breath in and hold it, and then exhale, emptying your lungs completely, your breath. Now take a third deep breath in, take your time, hold it for a moment, and then let it go. You can already begin to feel yourself drifting into a state of deep relaxation. That's our goal for the next several minutes. Continue with this cycle, breathing slowly and gently as you bring your awareness to the top of your head. Just sense or imagine a feeling of relaxation beginning to spread down from the top of your scalp. Feel the muscles in your forehead and temples relax. Allow your eye muscles to release. Let your cheeks and jaw soften. And simply let go of all tension. Now let this peaceful feeling flow down your neck. Feel it loosening every muscle and every fiber. Notice your breathing pattern, and as you breathe, take in this relaxing feeling, becoming deeper, maybe warmer. It works its way deep into the muscles in your shoulders, soothing them and then releasing them. This peaceful feeling flows down from your shoulders and into your arms, loosens the muscles in your upper arms, your forearms, your hands, relaxing and soothing all the way to the tips of your fingers. And as your body relaxes, your mind relaxes, and your thoughts seem to become lighter. And you're slipping further and further into a state of stillness and relaxation. Now bring your awareness to your chest and your stomach. Feel how this area of your body gently rises and falls as you breathe. Peaceful sensation flows throughout this area of your body, soothing every muscle, relaxation, and relaxing every organ. You can feel it releasing every last molecule of tension. And now, as you might notice your mind slip away to maybe one of the stories of the heroes that we heard in a panel, or some other thing your mind is occupied, no worries. Just simply bring your attention back to my voice. And now focus your attention to your upper back and feel this relaxing sensation flow all the way down your spine. Imagine a waterfall. And as it gradually works its way down your body, feel again every muscle in your back relax and unwind. Feel that your entire upper body has become loose, maybe limp, maybe more relaxed. Try to sink into the serene sensation, be present in it, hold it. How often do we get the luxury of focusing on the spines of our backs? Relax more and more deeply with each breath. As we're scanning down our body, now feel your hips relax as the peaceful feeling starts to work its way through your lower body. Begin to relax your backside, the backs of your thighs, the front of your thighs. Feel all these large, strong muscle groups becoming looser and more relaxed with each passing moment. Soothing feelings of relaxation flow down through your knees, into your calves, your ankles relax. Your feet relax. Allow your entire lower body to completely relax. Notice the areas of tension as you're scanning your body, no worries. Just notice them. Allow any remaining tension from anywhere in your body to flow out through the tips of your toes. Imagine in this moment that you are comfortable, that you are peaceful, and that you are relaxed. And hold this space for a moment. This group mindfulness activity that I walked you through is referred to as a body scan. And it's a powerful tool, and that it's something that you can offer yourself as a gift of self-care, really anywhere you are, at your desk, whether it's at your home or in the office, whether you have 5 or 10 minutes or a single minute or maybe even more, that this is a treat, a gift you can give yourself, an important part of self-care. An important element of mental wellness is the awareness of when we need it the most. And so to do this on a regular basis, to commit to that is a gift you can give yourself. The challenges of being an ambassador of health equity are heavy and burdened, and it's of value and of priority to be equal parts giving to ourselves. And here is a opportunity to do that. I've walked you through today. I will tomorrow. I invite you to do on your own. These body scans are great ways, things you can do, listen to. There's so many apps and available resources to simply tap into a body scan as one type of mindfulness or meditation that can be really powerful. And I would like to challenge all of us to do this on a regular basis as a way to provide self-care, to sustain our work as health equity ambassadors. Thank you so much for this time. I hope you are feeling a sense of relaxation, and you can use the remaining break as you feel fit. Appreciate the opportunity to guide you today. It was really an honor to be before you and walk you through this mindfulness exercise. Thank you, Joseph, and thank you to CHEC for this wonderful forum.
Of course, thank you so much, Dr. Mangesha, for leading us through that amazing body scan. I definitely feel a lot more relaxed. So thank you so much. And your voice is very soothing as well. So thank you so much for that. And so now we're going to introduce Henrietta from the folks over at Essential. She's just gonna pop in to say a quick hello while we have some extra time during our break. And when she's done, we're also going to be resuming at 12:25. So I'm gonna pass the floor to Henrietta right now. Hi, Henrietta. I think she's trying to unmute herself. Hi, folks at Essential. It's unfortunate that we can't see them, but you can see the video. Hi, everyone. I just love seeing all the smiling faces. But we're going to be resuming at 12:25. So if you want to take a break right now, step away from your computer, get a quick snack, go to the bathroom really quick or something, and we will be resuming at 12:25. So hello, everyone, and welcome back to our sessions from our break. I hope that was a very refreshing and energizing break for everyone. Our next session is going to be on neighborhood violence and lung cancer. And we have our speaker, Dr. Sage Kim, with us. And so I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Kim for their presentation. Hi, Dr. Kim, how are you?
Hello, I think somebody has my presentation.
Melissa, do you have that? Awesome.
Great. All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to connect with you today. I am Sage Kim. I'm faculty at UF, University of Illinois, Chicago School of Public Health. So here's my memory of Dr. Warnecke. So he yelled at me many times to listen. I have a tendency to talk over other people, and he told me to sort of stop and listen. And I think I actually fixed my bad habits. So I'm really grateful that he helped me see my shortcomings. And it's better for all the things that I'm doing, engaging in community. And, you know, this could have been like a really bad, you know, obstacle for me. So I want to talk to you about neighborhood violence and lung cancer risk. My research mainly focuses on neighborhood effects and particularly the impact of crime, violence, and policing on health. And so I've been thinking a lot about how neighborhood conditions actually affect health. More specifically, I'm interested in sort of social biological mechanisms to understand how social experiences may affect our biophysical responses that contribute to health disparities. So I want us to think about two questions. First, how neighborhood conditions affect health outcomes, and secondly, how these neighborhood conditions, good or bad, are transmitted between generations, which then contribute to persisting inequalities in health. Next slide, please. So where you live is a significant component of overall health outcomes. Ms. Karina spoke about this. It shouldn't be, but currently more than half of variance in one's health is determined by one's zip code. It's largely because neighborhood, social, economic, and built environment determine the levels of risk exposure, access to care, as well as health behavior. But because of significant racial and income segregation, Black and white communities are affected by vastly uneven residential conditions, and differential neighborhood context may explain racial disparities in health outcomes. One specific mechanism for this would be chronic exposure to neighborhood violence. So can we go to the next slide? So think about lung cancer. Lung cancer is the leading cause of cancer deaths, accounting for nearly 25% of all cancer deaths. And despite advances in screening and treatment, racial inequalities in lung cancer incidence and mortality continue to exist. And nationally, the lung cancer incidence rate is higher for Blacks compared with whites. The rate, incidence, and mortality gap between Black and white communities actually is greater in Chicago. This is despite the fact that the prevalence and frequency of smoking are lower for Blacks, thus the African-American smoking paradox. So the smoking paradox may imply that factors beyond individual smoking behavior, such as neighborhood conditions and social stress, may affect the risk of developing lung cancer in Black communities. Next slide, please. So we know that chronic exposure to violence produces physiological stress responses that dysregulate neuroendocrine systems that are linked to pro-inflammatory immune responses, and COX-2, an enzyme that promotes inflammation, is often overexpressed in cancerous lesions. So we can hypothesize that greater exposure to social stress increases the inflammatory cell environment that's conducive to developing lung cancer. Next. Yeah, so briefly, protein methylation is a molecular mechanism that may explain the link between social risk and then molecular changes related to lung cancer. And protein arginine methyltransferase, PRMTs, are a family of enzymes that catalyze arginine methylation, which then modulate gene expression. And we know that there are 9 PRMTs in mammals, and the expression of PRMTs are altered in certain cancers, particularly PRMT1 and 6 overexpression. It's shown to be associated with lung cancer, and studies show that PRMT6 is only one that showed racial differences. So we're looking at PRMT6. Some studies also report that PRMT6 also plays a role in inflammatory responses. PRMT6 modulates gene expression by directly interacting with transcription factors that are related to inflammatory responses. So I will propose that we think about exposure to neighborhood violence, which is a source of stress, and chronic stress increases immune responses, which then may interact with PRMT6 expression, leading to increased risk of developing lung cancer. So next slide, please. So one of my goals is to develop context-specific lung cancer risk profiles. So for this, I use medical records from the University of Illinois Hospital for all patients who received any lung cancer screening or diagnostic procedures between 2013 and 2018. And then I geocoded patient addresses, and I sort of attached neighborhood level characteristics using census and medical examiners data, and I estimated neighborhood level lung cancer risk. So the medical record data included about 8,000 unique individuals who were living in Chicago during 2013 and 2018. And of those, 16% were diagnosed with lung cancer. And of those lung cancer cases, 21% had died by the time we extracted the record. Overall, lung cancer patients were older, more likely to be male, more likely to have a history of smoking, which we do know. And Hispanic patients were less likely to have lung cancer than other race groups. Comparing race ethnic groups, Black patients were younger. Smoking rates were lower for Hispanic patients. In terms of neighborhood characteristics, Black patients were by far more likely to live in neighborhoods with higher crime and homicide rates, as well as higher poverty rate. Next slide, please. So to group these cases that I got from U of I medical record into sort of combinations of lung cancer risk factors, I implemented a decision tree classification. Here's the outcome. It starts with age, which is like the most significant predictor. So those people who are over 60, who had history of smoking, and those who live in neighborhoods with above average homicide rates had the highest lung cancer rates. In this group, 19.8% of patients had lung cancer, compared with the percent lung cancer for those who lived in areas with below average homicide rate, which while all other conditions are the same, the rate was at 12.8%. So there's 7 percentage point difference, about 35% difference in lung cancer between patients from above average and below average homicide rate. Next slide, please. So with the decision tree model results, I use logistic regression to get the coefficients of predictors. Looking at the regression results here, you know, those who are 60 and older were more likely. People who have a history of smoking were also more likely to be diagnosed with lung cancer, and Hispanic patients were less likely than white patients to be diagnosed with lung cancer. Additionally, those people living in neighborhoods with a greater than mean average homicide rate were more likely to have lung cancer. Next slide, please. So from that logistic regression coefficients, I used a synthetic population to estimate population level lung cancer risk. The primary goal of sort of exploring the spatial distribution of lung cancer risk is to identify clusters of communities with elevated lung cancer risk, given the pattern of racial as well as economic segregation. Health risk factors are clustered in disadvantaged neighborhoods, and these areas also lack access to healthcare and social services, while there's eroded social capital, I mean community capacity to deal with community issues collectively. So as a result, burden of disease is clustered in already vulnerable communities. Next slide, please. So here in Chicago, as you all know, you see the lighter lines are census tract boundaries, and the thicker lines are 77 community areas. Predominantly Black communities are located on the west and south side of the city, and Hispanic communities are located on the north and southwest side. The map on the left showed the racial ethnic distribution of the city, and then the map on the right shows the probability of developing lung cancer. So this is like the probability that I estimated from the logistic regression and synthetic population. So you can see the elevated lung cancer risk is clustered on the west and south side communities, which are for the most part predominantly Black communities. Next slide, please. And here I compared the distribution of lung cancer probability and the homicide rate. You can see a quite distinct spatial correlation, particularly the west and the south side of Chicago communities are affected by both lung cancer and homicide rate. Next slide, please. Here, I sorted 77 community areas by lung cancer risk from the highest to the lowest, and I also showed the homicide rate for individual community areas. So communities towards the bottom of the graph are the ones with elevated lung cancer probability, and the dark to light brown color indicate a homicide rate. We just saw from the map that homicide rates are higher for the communities with elevated lung cancer risk. Here you see that at the community, 77 Chicago community area level. Next slide, please. But you can see how lung cancer risk is concentrated in highly segregated, high poverty areas. First, more than 80% of the residents of these community areas, I'm zooming into the highest lung cancer community area here, are predominantly Black communities. Although the average percent, we have less than 30% of Chicago population is Black, but over 80% of the residents of these community areas are Black. In fact, the majority of these community have over 90% Black residents. And the average poverty rate for the city is at 17%. But for example, West Inglewood, with the highest lung cancer risk estimate, has over 32% of residents living below the poverty line. Inglewood, over 40% poverty, Fuller Park, 47% poverty. So these are really communities affected by extreme segregation and economic deprivation. Next slide, please. So I think the problem here is that over 13% of Chicago Black residents who are over 60 years of age and history of smoking lived in communities with a high prevalence of violence, while only 0.7% of Hispanic and 0.4% of white residents of older adult with history of smoking lived in high crime violent area. This indicates that more than 19,000 Chicago Black residents at high risk of lung cancer, which is an older adult with a history of smoking, right, were exposed to violence, while additionally increased the risk of lung cancer. On the other hand, it's about less than 600 individuals, Black and Hispanic, white and Hispanic residents were exposed to neighborhood violence. So what this means is that about 30 times more Black residents at high risk of lung cancer actually are exposed to an additional contextual risk of lung cancer. On the other hand, these communities have, already been, underserved due to lack of access to healthcare and social services. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yeah, so to summarize, exposure to violence was significantly associated with increased risk of lung cancer, but the National Lung Cancer Screening Guidelines recommend that adults age 50 and 80 years who have a 20-pack year smoking history to get lung cancer screening, low-dose CT scan every year. The National Lung Cancer Screening Guidelines does not take into account neighborhood conditions that may increase the risk of lung cancer. So I think including social stress exposure could help with screening and early detection of lung cancer, particularly among patients living in a highly disadvantaged community. Because U of I hospital recently decided to include social determinant measures in their EPIC system, this could be a unique opportunity to design a systems level intervention that incorporate neighborhood context for early detection of lung cancer. Next slide, please. So neighborhood conditions affect health. but long-term exposure to disadvantaged residential environment has distinct effects compared to like short-term sporadic spells of deprivation. And it's been documented that white families are more likely to experience temporary spells of living in poor areas, while Black families are more likely to experience persistent exposure to neighborhood disadvantage. So poor families tend to be stuck in poor neighborhoods over generations. So this stickiness of neighborhood context across generations, I think maybe one of the mechanisms for persisting racial residential stratification and concentration of disadvantage. And what's more is that the pattern of intergenerational neighborhood mobility is very different for Black and white families. Next slide, please. So to examine the direction of neighborhood mobility and the strength of the stickiness by race, I used a national panel study of income dynamics data set. It's a national level longitudinal data set that began in 1968 and followed families over 50 years. So I constructed parent-child pairs to compare neighborhood ranks. To do that, I used data collected close to age at 35 years, you know, to measure adulthood neighborhood condition. So overall, I was able to create 2,800 pairs, parent and child pairs, to compare the neighborhood ranking. So can we go to the next slide, please? So looking at the 2,800 pair parent-child pairs, you can see here for Black families, 62% of children whose parents' neighborhood ranked the bottom 20 percentile actually ended up living in the bottom 25 percentile neighborhoods as adult. On the other hand, for white families, less than 30% of children grew up in the bottom 25 percentile parental neighborhood, continue to live in the lowest ranking neighborhood in their adulthood. Now, look at the top 25 percentile ranks. Less than 20% of Black children grew up in the top ranking neighborhood, actually maintain the high neighborhood ranks in their adulthood. For white children, 49% of those who grew up in the wealthiest neighborhood ended up actually living in the top ranking neighborhood as adult. Next slide, please. So there's a substantial racial difference in terms of what's transmitted between parent and child generations. Here's the median neighborhood rank mobility. As you can see, generally children from the lowest ranking neighborhood tend to move out of this lowest ranking neighborhoods, but the size of this upward mobility is quite different between Black and white families. For the lowest ranking neighborhood, median neighborhood mobility for white families was 18.2 percentage point higher than median mobility for Black families. On the other hand, for the highest ranking neighborhood, there was loss of ranks for both white and Black families, but the median neighborhood rank mobility was 31 percentage point lower for Black families than for white families. So next slide, please. So one way to think about the racial neighborhood rank gap would be to think about the amount of additional income a Black families need in order to achieve the same neighborhood rank as white families, holding parental neighborhood ranking consistent. And so in this graph, the red line shows the predicted neighborhood ranks for Black children against a parental neighborhood rank, and the blue line shows predicted neighborhood rank for white children set at the 12th grade education, and then an annual income of 30,000. So the first thing to notice here is that for white families, as parent neighborhood rank increases, child neighborhood ranks also increases. But for Black families, child neighborhood rank increases only to a certain point, and then it starts to fall. So that's one. Next, the gray line indicates the additional income that a Black child would need to earn to reach the same neighborhood rank as a white child holding all other variables the same. So for example, children born to parents at the 25th percentile neighborhood rank were expected to live in neighborhood ranks at the 27th percentile for Blacks, but 45th percentile for whites if their income was set at 30,000 and education at 12 years. So based on this model, a Black child would require an additional $100,000 of income to attain the same neighborhood ranks as a white child. The amount of income required to equalize neighborhood ranks between Black and white families was even greater when parental neighborhood ranks were highest at the, as well as the lowest rank. Next slide, please. So to summarize, parental neighborhood conditions affect the type of neighborhood the next generation ends up residing, thus this stickiness of neighborhood context. But the pattern of residential mobility differs by race. In general, people tend to move to wealthier and wider neighborhoods as they accumulate wealth, but factors other than income and wealth may affect the pattern of residential mobility for Black families. The problem is that the intergenerational inheritance of context determines the level of exposure to social stress and access to social services and healthcare, which ultimately affect health. Next slide, please. So to conclude, social factors become biological factors through several mechanisms. And neighborhood conditions affect health because social, economic, and built environment determine one's exposure to risk as well as access to care and social services. Particularly, exposure to social stress contributes to downstream biological changes related to cancer outcomes. And neighborhood disadvantage is transmitted across generations. As we discussed, for Black families to be able to live in the same level of neighborhood as white families will require to earn over $100,000 more, which probably is nearly impossible for many families. So to achieve health equity, I think we need to think about different kinds of interventions, interventions that aim to improve neighborhood conditions rather than, solely focus on individual level health behaviors. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Kim, for that very informative session on the relations between neighborhood violence and lung cancer rates in Chicago. Hi, everyone. Welcome back from our break. It is currently 1:15, and we have Ronnie in the meeting already. So hi, Ronnie. It's nice to have you. And she's going to be giving our closing remarks today. So the floor is yours, Ronnie.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. I will share my screen and we'll have a conversation. So again, thank you everyone for having me this afternoon. You've done a great job putting this conference together, and I am honored to have been asked to speak. I wanted to spend a few minutes as we wrap up the day to kind of put it all together, if you don't mind, and give us some food for thought as we consider next steps after hearing all the information and speakers today. So let's talk about hearing versus listening, and we're going to talk about it through the prism of hearing versus listening to our patients, our communities, and those that we are choosing to serve. So my kids would roll their eyes at this, but it's really a very important concept, especially when addressing the needs of our patients and communities. We're very smart. Some of us have lots of degrees, know our fields very well. We know what to do technically, but when it comes to our patients and the communities that we serve, are we listening to them or are we just hearing them? So there's a difference between listening and hearing. Like I said, my kids will roll their eyes, but I can tell the difference when I'm talking to them between when they just heard me, I get yeah. And when they were listening, they look in my eyes, they ask questions, they might even have a physical reaction to what I've said. I bring these definitions to you to share, to actively address the needs of our patients and communities across the healthcare spectrum, but in particular, as we think about healthcare disparities, we need to be listening instead of just hearing. Hearing is passive, it's involuntary, it requires no effort. It is literally the physiological reception of sound, but listening is an active process. It is voluntary, it requires great effort, and it's intentional. And so when we think about our communities and our patients and addressing needs, we really have to practice listening and not just hearing. So talking about disparities and our communities and being knowledgeable about what the needs are, we can start off with something that I'm sure most of you are familiar with, but we know that healthcare is one of the most turbulent and fast-changing areas in today's society. So our technology, our techniques, our outcomes have moved at a relatively fast pace. Our ability to close the gap between races as it pertains to life expectancy has moved relatively slow in comparison. For example, studies have shown that Black American mortality is higher compared to whites for centuries. Racism is a factor, as well as other social determinants of health. But while we know that these conditions change decade over decade, century over century, the fact that these conditions exist and have a disproportionate impact on persons of certain races, ethnicities, genders, and even sexual orientation is not new. As you may know, Chicago in particular is one of the biggest offenders. We have the largest life expectancy gap in the country. According to a 2019 study by NYU School of Medicine, those living in Streeterville live to an average age of 90, compared to persons living in Inglewood who live to an average age of 60. That's a 30-year difference right here in this city of Chicago, depending on where you live, your zip code. So over the last 2.5 years in particular, mainstream media and quite a few of our healthcare organizations that should have already known this have realized that healthcare is not equitable, have realized that racism is real and present, have realized that people, our communities, our patients are receiving inferior care because of their race, ethnicity, or zip code. I would remind us all that this, of course, as you all know, being at a CHEC conference, this didn't start with COVID-19 or the murder of George Floyd. This has been a persistent reality for years. Again, the CHEC community is well acquainted with the persistent racial disparities in cancer incidence and outcomes, hence the existence of CHEC. You're knowledgeable about the research that demonstrates that in addition to hereditary risk and genetic determinants, socioeconomic factors, access, discrimination, bias, and exposure to risk factors due to social and economic inequities are all contributory to the racial disparities that are found in cancer. So it's not new, just like racism and bias in care are not new. When we go back just a couple of decades, the 1999 journal, JAMA, Journal of American Medical Association, published a study around state-specific maternal mortality comparing Black and white women going back 87 to 1996. At the time of that study, 23 years ago, which looked at a previous 10-year period, so we're talking about 35 years ago, the findings indicate that in every state where maternal mortality could reliably be calculated, Black women were more likely than white women to die from complications of pregnancy. Now, we know that technology has improved. We've got better technology. People can give birth and be home the next day if they choose, right? However, even as we've had all those advances, the CDC right now states that Black women are still 3 times more likely to die from a pregnancy-related cause than white women. You'll see a picture of Dr. Shanice Wallace, who was a pediatric resident that died shortly after giving birth to her first child in October of 2020. Maternal mortality rate for Black women and Hispanic women remains abysmal in comparison to white women, even when income, education, insurance are controlled for. So we have a persistent issue that is not new, like I said, although sometimes the news and the media will make you think that this is a new occurrence, that this is a burgeoning issue. This is a long-standing issue that we have got to get our hands around to continue to address. Why race, ethnicity, zip code are contributory and reasons that lead to higher mortality and worse overall health outcomes. So we know that this is the case. The health disparities and inequities truly did not just begin, and they are longstanding. But with this renewed awakening, our healthcare community and our organizations have started to reprioritize. First, starting off locally, as many of you may remember, many of the hospitals in Chicago signed a statement asserting that racism is a public health crisis, which was great to acknowledge because it is, and has been for quite some time. Also, healthcare organizations have begun to recognize that health equity is not just about offering a service or having the best care available. That's part of it, but that's not all of it. If it were, then we wouldn't have issues, right? Because even the best institutions, if they're offering great care, then outcomes should be better no matter the race or ethnicity. But we know that that's not reality. And so that's where, and I know many of you are familiar with this concept, a good reminder to all of us that equality does not equal equity. We can offer the absolute best, highest quality of care, but if we are not adjusting our lens, our accessibility, and our approach, our patients can't access it if they don't know it's there, if they can't afford it, they can't travel to it, or if there's any other barriers that we don't resolve as institutions and organizations in a healthcare community, then we're not providing equitable care. It may be there, but everyone can't get to it. So things that we have to think about, and again, COVID-19, I often tell people, you know, I know I heard this week, sounds like the pandemic's over. I don't know if everybody agrees with that, but what I will say about COVID-19 is part of the reason it was so devastating, and you know, across the world, of course, but then in certain communities, particularly in the United States, certain communities were hit harder than others. And the reason for that was it exacerbated literally every single social determinant of health that exists. Transportation. Patients couldn't get to their appointments because public transportation was shut down. So they couldn't move around if they were someone who used public transportation. You couldn't travel safely without that. Health literacy was a factor that was also significantly impacted. Not as some people who have maybe a low health literacy didn't have a thorough understanding of risk and prevention strategies, an understanding of when to return to care, when not to delay, concerns around stigma. Employment and socioeconomic status, huge contributory factor that was exacerbated by COVID. In particular, think about our patients and community members that were part of the gig economy, our hairstylists, our waiters and waitresses that couldn't remote and had to stay home for weeks and months and then collect extended unemployment because the economy was slow to rebound and those jobs were slow to come back. Multi-generational households, the infections occurred, and then when people lived in households with several generations that were living in the same place, people couldn't effectively isolate. Sometimes there weren't enough bathrooms and bedrooms. One person would be infected and then the entire house would be infected, including those who are most vulnerable. These are conditions that have always existed and have always been contributory in terms of sometimes worsened health outcomes and mortality. But COVID literally pulled them all together at once to lay them bare. Internet access was another thing that was exacerbated by COVID. We switched to remote learning for our children. Very difficult for some kids to manage, very difficult for the learning and consideration of learning loss. Some people were able to shift to remote work. Some people weren't. We made a shift to telehealth and keeping in line with remote. So some people were able to access care via telehealth, and for some, telehealth was a barrier because they're not able to navigate technology or didn't have internet. Our access for seniors, again, something that is a real and present issue every day. But if you think about with COVID, vaccine deployment was largely internet-based. If you wanted to get a vaccine appointment at many organizations or even at the mass clinics like United Center, you had to go onto the website in order to book your appointment and give information. Access for the undocumented. Many people who were undocumented and facing COVID-19 or at risk were not comfortable coming into healthcare systems. So it was about getting the message out that both the care and the vaccines were covered and that the federal government was covering it and there would be no cost. People wouldn't come away with the bill. That's a very real and present issue before COVID and after COVID. People not coming into healthcare because they're undocumented and underinsured. Housing. We had an eviction moratorium and then there was an eviction spike afterwards, but we know very well that even aside from aside from COVID, housing is a real and present issue that affects social determinants of health and outcomes. If you don't have stable housing, sometimes you don't get care. It drops very low on the list. And so housing is another thing that was, again, exacerbated. We did put a lot of things in place to help the homeless as shelters shut down, as people didn't have places to go. But COVID-19 going away doesn't mean that these issues have gone away. Race and racism, very significant. There was a racial awakening, as I referred to earlier, and a rise in racist rhetoric and hate crimes towards persons of the Asian community, persons who are Black. These things were on the rise during COVID. Again, didn't get created by COVID, but were exacerbated and have persisted. And then finally, trauma and violence. There's documented statistical increase in violence after the first year of COVID, as the country has grappled with the aftermath of isolation, economic challenges, things in organizations closing and not rebounding, there's been an ongoing persistent effect. And again, that is part of it being a social determinant of health, dealing with the trauma and the violence, and how does that affect whether or not somebody comes to care, whether or not someone is open to care. Those are all part of addressing disparities and understanding what's going into that patient and that community before they ever set foot into our organizations. So as I start to wrap up, it's just a reminder, as we've talked about these things today, we've thought about a lot of the information presented here today, we need to listen and not just hear our patients and our communities. If you build it, they will come, is something that's often said, but how are we engaging our patients and communities as we create and improve access? Are we bringing the care to them, or do they have to take 2 buses and a train to get to it because we're so far out of the neighborhood? Are we asking our patients, what do you need, when we assess them, rather than telling them what they think we need or what we can provide them? Does individual assessment include taking into account non-health challenges that are impacting the health and the health of the community? Are we listening and asking follow-up questions? How are we connecting with our patients and communities? Are we just collecting information from them and not giving them anything back in return? Or are we actively putting resources back into the community based on what they tell us? Have we listened to the barriers and contributory factors? As healthcare organizations and advocates, are we actively working to eliminate, or are we just empathizing? We have to move from listening then to action. Addressing health equity is a multi-pronged approach. Organizations, government, healthcare institutions, communities, payers, clinicians, and the patients themselves all have to contribute. We must identify specific actions that we want to take to improve health disparities and health equity. We have to take a holistic approach to care and community. Who is that patient in front of you? What is the issue at hand? Do we understand the community? Have we done a thorough assessment, or are we making assumptions? We have to invest in resources for both the community and individuals. Talk without money and without action means absolutely nothing. And finally, similar to what we've done today, we have to collaborate, but still hold organizations, people, even our politicians accountable for addressing the needs of our community and really coming back and investing. That being said, that concludes my remarks for today. Thank you for having me, and I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Ronnie, for that very informative presentation and for your amazing remarks to end this amazing session today. Thank you so much, everyone, for being a participant and joining this conference from wherever location that you're at. Just a reminder that we will be having our second and final day tomorrow from 11. So we hope to see you all bright and early. And with that, I will let you go about the rest of your day. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you to our speakers and all of our participants. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.